Diary, it is September 2023 and we are here in the study, and tonight we're going to be talking about the Garmin 965 and the fact that both members of our family, myself and my partner, are now both running Garmin 965 smartwatches. And if I'll tell you, we are extremely particular people, and if we are both using such a smartwatch, you can really bet that it is something quite special. So tonight I'm just going to go through all the features that we use of the 965 and make you realise what a great product it is. This is obviously not sponsored by Garmin anyway, but do call me Garmin if you fancy it. I'm going to tell you why it's a good top tier product which might suit you if you are kind of an athlete and someone who cares about their health. To the extent that you want to monitor your health, you want to see what activities you've done, and you want others to be able to share and see what you've been doing. Okay, so I'm going to run through the laundry list of features which I think are important, and you can make your own choice. So the first feature of the Garmin 965 is the bright OLED display. So I firmly believe that in the future, smartwatches will all go to OLED displays, because whilst the display is only on for a few seconds and then it switches off, it is extremely bright and clear to read. In my particular case, my eyesight is not the best, and as I'll stress in different points of this review, an OLED display really helps. So if you have less than perfect eyesight, I would really look at an OLED display watch first and foremost. I wouldn't even consider an LCD. So clear bright OLED display, that's a must. And the 965, by the way, has a slightly larger display than my last Garmin. And that was probably the clinching factor as to why I upgraded to the 965 from the old Epix watch. Second bullet point is the screen protection and toughness. So this is a very light but also very tough watch. It's made out of kind of it's not a metal-bodied watch, unlike the Epix or Phoenix series watches, but it is very tough. And because it's so light, I feel that if you were to drop it, it somehow survives very well. I don't like to test it, but it has been dropped once or twice already. Now, one of the qualifications to the great design of this watch is the fact that I nearly sent it back because of the poor design of the bezel. So this actually has a domed screen and no protruding bezel, rather like a certain Apple watch, which I'm sure started this nonsense off. I mean, in the olden days, watches would also always have a protective bezel. So if you drop the watch, the bezel's going to hit the rock, not your watch face. But these days, unfortunately, even Garmin has succumbed to this nonsense whereby it's beautiful but not as practical. So the saving grace is I managed to find a curved screen protector. It's not made out of tempered glass because it's got to go around corners, but at least there is a screen protector that one can apply to this watch. So it's not quite as good as a flat screen and a protruding bezel, but we're working with it. The next thing I'd like to say is, of course, this watch does step tracking. Even the cheapest of sports watches now do step tracking. Again, Apple, for example, is not keen on step tracking. You've got to jump through hoops to get your watch to do step tracking. But every other sports fitness platform loves step tracking. So, of course, the Garmin does that. And multi sports activities, yes. So there are at least 20 pre-canned activities like running, cycling, stand-up paddle, etc., which are already programmed into this watch. But you can just create your own. And so you can create a watch with an activity called Fred, and you might have 4 screens, and the first screen's got 2 fields, the second screen's got 4 fields, the last screen's got 5 fields, etc. It's completely customizable and up to you. And there's a whole set of parameters that you can use to fill those fields. There could be it could be data points itself. It could be the time of day. It could be the number of kilometers traveled. It could be your speed. It could be your average speed, or it could be something like a graph. So if it could be like a heart rate graph, your graph of your heart rate over the activity, or for example, it could be the heart rate scale. So the Garmin watch knows, you told it what your resting heart rate is, what your maximum heart rate is, and what your heart rates are in between, and so it can tell what amount of exercise you're doing, and it can have a scale, a coloured scale, depending on where you are on that range. So many sports activities are covered. If you want to just put one in there that you particularly want, or you want to edit, you've got the running activity that they've come up with, you want to add another screen. You might have a course screen you want to add, for example, a screen just to do with the course that you're on. In other words, the number of kilometres to the next waypoint, the number of kilometres to the end, your estimated time of arrival, your moving time in this course. That could be an additional screen you put in. The next point is capable of a 10-hour plus race. So this watch has extremely good battery life. Part of the reason is that the watch doesn't switch on until you raise your wrist. And so for most of the time, the display is off, and the display is what is eating up the battery. Personally, if you're not in a race, I would just charge your watch every day. I charge my watch when I go into the shower. When I come out of the shower, I check if it's not 100%, I leave it charging until it gets to 100%. And that does me every day. If I'm doing a race, obviously the watch battery will have been more depleted and I might need a longer shower. So it tends to work itself out. This watch is easily capable of a 10-hour race, even if you're using it as an audio device as well. I don't use this as an audio player, but you can download MP3 files onto it and play them to your wireless earbuds. As I've noted here, my primary things I do use it for are running, hiking, trail running and track running, and superb in all four areas. Another thing that we use watches for is to export our heart rate to other devices. So our cycle trainer can read an ANT+ signal, and I can export my heart rate from me to the cycle trainer, so that it's recorded, and so the cycle trainer can make use of that data. And the same is true when I'm doing a cycle ride. I export my heart, or at that moment, heart rate to the cycle computer, so I can see it on the cycle computer screen. The next thing to talk about will be detail maps. This is a £500 plus watch, and as such, you would expect it to have detailed maps, and these are high detail maps on this beautifully high resolution OLED screen, and it makes navigation on a trail just the best. So if you're not aware of the situation, if you're going on a hike, the best would be is if your colleague or you generate a GPS file, which is a routing file. You give that to your friends, or your friends give it to you, and then you all start the hike, for example, off with that course loaded. And that means you all can participate in navigation during that hike or activity. Data export. So these days, Garmin is not the only game in town, and I would say that activities normally get exported to Strava, and I also cross-export metrics to Apple Health. Now, I would say I'm a bit surprised to say, but Apple Health is really good. It does a lot of different metrics, even things like blood oxygen and heart rate type data. So I would really, it's a winning system. You can use something called RunGap to move the data out of your Garmin and squeeze it into other places like Apple Health and Strava. Another thing this watch does for me is it does a daily wake-up report. I don't use the watch for alarms. I have a different watch for that, which is better than the Garmin. You can use a Garmin watch for alarms to get you up in the morning. But the Garmin has this wake-up health report whereby it's analysed your statistics for the last day's activities, and it's also analysed your sleep, and it comes up with a report saying how well it thinks you've recovered from the last day, what your readiness is for training for the current day, and you can build up that report. You can add or subtract things into that report. So every morning when I get up, I get this daily health report, which is just great. I really like it. At any point during the day, you can look at the components that make up that report, and those are typically glances. So by pressing this middle button here, you can go into the glance option of the watch, and I'm just doing it badly. Let's try and do it properly. I'm trying to show you that I can scroll up. You can see that I'm scrolling up these different metrics, and those are the kind of metrics that I see. So I can see I've got heart rate variability metric, and click on that, and I can see I've got a 46 millisecond balanced. Baseline is 40, last night average was 43 milliseconds, and I can even get a graph. I can get a graph of the heart rate variability, for example. So these are all the things that show up in a summary form in the morning report, and you can go into it in more detail as you like. Like I say, the health metrics that I use are pushed up to Apple Health primarily, although they are also stored under Garmin. Another big thing I use is sleep metrics, and it's nice to know how much deep sleep and light sleep you've had in the previous night. And if it's not right, Garmin will tell you, and your body will probably tell you as well. But it's nice to know what your metrics are in that regard. If you don't have good sleep, you don't have a good waking time. That's my opinion. Some things I'm not using, I don't think we'll ever use, are, I think you can do training plans on the watch, but I don't use that. Alarms to wake you up, I don't use that because I've got a different watch for that. Notifications, which means text information sent from your smartphone. And so the idea is that it'll send you a message directly to your watch, so you don't have to look at your smartphone, which is very handy if you've got your smartphone in your pocket all the time. So that is something I use a lot, but I don't use it at all on the Garmin. I use a different watch for that. Again, also, I don't use Garmin for music, but you can load music onto the watch, or you can use a Spotify app. If you've got a Spotify subscription, it's extremely convenient. Not yet used is the race predictor. So you can say things like, I've got to run a marathon in 1 month's time, or 2 months' time. I would to run that marathon in 3 hours 30 or 3 hours 10 or whatever. And it knows what your current running capabilities are, and it will come up with a plan, hopefully a plan, where you can get to that level of fitness. I mean, obviously, if you're a 4-hour marathon runner and you say I want to do it in 2 hours 30, it's probably going to go. I don't think that's going to happen. But it can come up with a training plan, and it's quite clever. So I've not used that. I've not used this race predictor and race predictor slash planner, I should say. But my partner did use it, and it's flipping clever. So I think I've come to the end of it. That's the be all and end all of how I use the current watch. I use the watch daily. I think the biggest step forward in current watch technology is OLED displays. I think that's really a game changer, and I think most people have got LCD smartwatches, so pretty much everyone is up for a change. My partner's been hanging on for the LCD, and I managed to persuade her to go OLED, and even she says, oh, the display is beautiful. So what more can I say? Give the Garmin 965 a look. If you want a detailed technical review, I'll put a link to DC Rainmaker's technical review of the watch. Thank you for watching.